Talking ethics. Look at that. Here's how I like to think about this. We're at the end of the semester. Specifically, it's the fall semester. You know what that means? Literally, some of you aren't here. You're already at home for vacation, Thanksgiving. I know what you're doing, right? But why I mean that is like, hey, this is, we're at the end of the semester. I get it, it's stressful, but specifically, this is where we get to really kind of have that higher level kind of discussion on just the use of AI. It is taking over our world. We all know that. And again, it's Thanksgiving on Thursday. So if you're going to be celebrating with family, friends, whatever, you have a conversation. You're the smart one in the audience when it comes to like AI. Suddenly, you know how the sausage is made, and when you start talking, they will go cross-eyed or get distracted or something like that. I get that. But where I will kind of stress, first things first, I'm going to go ahead and throw out, this is the disclaimer. Half of this is just going to be me ranting and rambling. I know that my classes are normally half me ranting and rambling, but like this one is, so this is just everything that I've seen out there over the kind of months and years and been like, let me save that. That would be great to, add into just the ethics lecture and stuff like that. It's a hot mess. I'll go ahead and tell you that. I tried to put some semblance of flow to it. Some of these topics you may have a different opinion than me. Good. You should, right? Again, remember what AI is used for. Machines that kill people. Machines that help people. We're going to have polarizing, opinions on those types of things. So good, have those opinions, because again, one of the things about it is where can you take AI, right? And that's going to be beneficial. With that said, I'm not going to be trying to throw any of my political or sociological ideologies to you. I don't care. Right? Your person won the election, your person lost the election. I don't care. I'm here to teach you math. Right? I'm here to teach you how to make the killer robots that can also help us, right? I know the sausage has made me go mad, right? And so as a result, I am not your ethics class. I don't teach your ethics class. I am teaching ethics in AI 1, and I have less than 75 minutes to do so. So I can't be every topic out there on all the different, right? Robot rights. I'm not talking about them. Why? Because they don't have them. We're already starting with the ramblings, right? But no, so again, one of the things that as I was building out this version and starting to modify it for this semester, because again, we had the election over the summer, and I'll be 100% honest, deepfakes went just outlandish this summer. And so again, doesn't matter which side you went, just like everyone kind of went, oh, this is what AI can do now, right? But one of the things that I will start to kind of stress with that is like, we understand, AI is a powerful tool and there's hesitations to it. So a lot of this lecture is not just like doom and gloom over AI, but it's like, here are the reasons why people are apprehensive, hesitant about AI and the kind of issues that they see. And one of the things that I'd like to throw out is we're still trying to understand what ethics mean, especially in the context of AI. And why that matters is you might remember we got to go back to literally the first lectures I talked about. What does it mean to be intelligent? And we can't agree on that. And now we're trying to explain, try and rationalize what ethical AI means. Are we going to agree on what ethicality means? Some people are talking solidarity and dignity and sustainability, but you notice out of these different topics that we're trying to now do meta-analysis on what people consider to be AI, those are not as big, right? Those are not as prominent as the things like explainable AI or making sure that we have non-biased data, or that one's all, we're going to be unpacking in that one, right? A whole lot. Responsibility. Interestingly, privacy is a very polarizing thing. And I'll go ahead and warn you, if you have not looked through the slides, I have a lot on privacy, not piracy, different thing. But again, you can see, like, there's so many polarizing kind of concepts that we have to think about that I'm going to at least start with the basics. Let's just talk about what I train on, right? Again, yes, I will go ahead and be the first person to admit AI has bias. Why? It's literally in the design of what it's meant to do, right? Think about it. If I'm trying to train a classifier to differentiate between a dog and a cat, I have to train it on what a dog looks like. I'm already inserting bias into it by trying to tell you this is what a dog looks like. Right? So that becomes a major issue, but then it becomes, well, what am I training my data on? And so how that becomes a big issue, or not a big issue, how we kind of try and resolve that is because there may be so much data, we try and do data sampling, right? I don't know everything about all of you, but we try to collect data that would be pertinent to the questions or goals that I'm trying to achieve, right? And so sampling is our main process for grabbing out, just a little bit of the data, not too much. If any of you have ever attempted to use like any form of Firehose API, so for your Blue Skies, your Twitters, your Threads, any of those that are open access, you realize very quickly how fast data starts to stream out of it. It's called a fire hose for a reason, right? So the problem is, well, now how do I sample data? How do I only, pick a little bit of that data without then saying, oh, you're cherry picking, right? And so how you try and work at that is, again, it should work as well as if you had the entire data set. Again, the only reason you're sampling is because the entire data set causes you to, your program to run for hours on end and you can't get any data because it's going to take 2 weeks for you to debug your code, literally because it has to run for 2 weeks, right? But it also still has to not only work as well as that data set, it should still be representative of the original data set, right? And what do I mean by that? It's specifically in the types of sampling. How do I go about this sampling process? One approach is just random, right? So random, right? I have markers. There we are. I'm gonna pick one out in random, correct, right? We all agree that I can't quite see and I am at least shaking them, right? So I'm gonna lift one out. I got blue. We got blue. Anyone else also get blue? No? Okay. So now the question becomes, since I have sampled, again, I had 5 markers, I've removed 1 marker from there, what do I do now? Right? This is going to be in my evaluation data set, but what do I do with this now? And you can see I have approaches. One is replacement, AKA I selected this one, I log it, that wasn't intentional, but there happens to be a blue one here. And then, goes back into the pile for round 2. So like suddenly that blue marker, right, I have it recorded, it's still in my data set, but I may draw the blue marker again, right? That is what with replacement gets at. Without replacement, though, as you can start to see, that creates some issues because you notice that we're starting to deal with statistics, right? When I do with replacement, yes, I'm keeping the same data in there, but everything begins to become independent of each other, right? That's a good thing because that means I can do statistical analyses and make the assumption that things are independent. But what happens when I don't do replacement, right? Again, that happens, right? Sometimes you don't want to double dip on something. So suddenly, if I drew this time brown, right? now the probability of drawing all these other markers is influenced. I didn't put brown back, right? Now, what was a 1 in 5 chance just became a 1 in 4 chance. And that suddenly makes things different, right? That adjusts our values, and they stop being, independent, and they start depending on each other. And when they get drawn, and that becomes a major issue. But I will say it has its own different covariances, right? Again, how do they shift? Why I mention this is mostly not to you got to remember this, but specifically, you notice independent, the covariance was 0. Suddenly, the covariance is not 0, and we are starting to say, hey, they're no longer independent of each other. I will throw out another caveat to this. If you have a big enough data set, AKA definitely more than 5, definitely this is not a big data set. But if you have a big enough data set, then you'll notice that this is going to trend towards 0. So it's getting closer and closer to 0 as your N, or your data set size, gets bigger. So yes, they aren't independent, but now we're in that weird, ugly phase of real world application. I can't get all the data, but I can get a lot of data, right? So if you get a big enough one, sure, okay, with replacement works. But herein lies some problems, right? I made sort of an assumption about my markers. How are they being represented, or how are they distributed? Evenly. I have one of each, right? But what happens if I start to have, I'll cheat and use them, right? What happens if I start to have an uneven distribution, right? I have more reds and blues than I have greens, blacks, and browns suddenly. And that becomes a second question. How do I maintain or study or evaluate or work with populations that have lower representation in the data set? What do I mean by that, right? Okay, here's a better example to deal with it for a second. Well, we'll talk about it in a second, but it's called stratified sampling, right? This time now, the idea is you're not just doing random sampling, right? Random sampling allows for independence, which again, some statistical models are useful for, but the problem is, if I'm trying to study a specific kind of demographic or population or data set or cohort or whatever term you want to work off of, but the problem is they're very small, they're very rare, right? Those are the things that we do want to study and try and evaluate and work off of. How do I do it? So you have multiple options, but again, all you essentially now do is you you explicitly do the separation of your labels. So again, if I was working off of the dog and the cat analogy, let's imagine I had 500,000 dogs, but I only had 30,000 cats, right? Well, what do? Right? I want to study them both. I want to see the differences specifically between dogs and cats, right? They are not the same thing. So one option is to say, oh, we'll draw the same number from both classes. From all your individual classes, we're going to grab 10,000 from both of them, right? Or 1,000 from both of them. Or, again, this depends on what you're looking at, you could do a proportional amount. I want to maintain that, label imbalance. For what reasons? Because I'm studying it as a whole. Again, it depends on what your problem is, right? You have to sit down and think about it. So here's that example. To stop doing the dogs and cats, because right, they're dogs and cats. Let's imagine I have a data set, specifically a health care-based data set, right? I have over 500,000 patient records, right? Oh, okay. But specifically, you notice, right? I want to study sickle cell anemia. I want to study this medical condition or this health condition to better gain some understanding of it, see the differences between that, or maybe even to try and detect it in DNAs and people and whatnot. Well, again, that's a more rare condition. So, okay, if I just do random sampling on this data set, the problem is, right, what is, I don't even know how much that is. So that's 26,750 divided by 535. Right, that's 5% of the data. I have a 5% chance of every randomly selected number of getting it, right? That's not good odds when I'm trying to study that. So what do I do, right? In that case, we might need to do something different, right? Also, we're using kind of the analogy here. Hey, trying to run through all the records and all the processes and everything, we're using 500 attributes in this. So 500 or 100 attributes times this, it starts getting big, and that is difficult to train models on or do analysis on, right? So we're going to work off of a subset. But now the question is, well, based on this number, how do I determine how I draw my records? Do I go with random sampling, which I seem to have just explained was bad, or stratified sampling? Well, again, if I'm trying to make sure that I have representation of the sickle cell anemia, right, rather than drawing from these balances, sometimes I do want to keep that, or this is when I would say, let's split that up and say, let's do 5,000 sickle cell anemic patients and then 5,000 that are not anemic, right? Questions on why you would do that?
Say you don't have 5,000 sickle cell anemia.
Okay, so I don't have 5,000 sickle cell anemias. Uh-huh. Yeah, so the question is, are there ethical considerations with oversampling? So let's imagine, excuse me, let's imagine instead of this being 26,000, it was 2,750. There are ethical considerations, and this is where it's, this is me like playing this out in my own brain. So you would be oversampling, right? If you're still trying to maintain the 10,000 split at 5,000 ways. So yes, the big issue there becomes, can you get more data? If you cannot, then it is something that you must clearly address that you are oversampling, right? That is, again, that's some of the reasons why we do the stratified. You effectively, like if you did stratified sampling with replacement, you're essentially drawing from the same thing over and over again, but you have to kind of, that's where when it comes to like, as you're explaining what you do from a research perspective or a journalistic perspective, you explicitly are like, here's how we drew this data. And so you would be explaining stratified with replacement. So yes, and then here's what you do to fix it is the question, or the answer, hopefully, to that. Others? All righty. Well, again, this kind of gets into, you notice, right, why would I want to study this lower population? Well, again, one of the big things that has been a use for AI has been this concept of early prediction, right? Hey, I have a bunch of attributes. Rather than it necessarily being like, oh, here's the attributes of a snake or the mushroom to determine if it's positive, good or bad, or credit risk, suddenly it becomes, well, hey, how quickly can I make that prediction? Can I make that prediction, say, for example, 2 months before something? Maybe instead of 2 months, 2 weeks, right? How soon could I predict the onset of sepsis? Because if we think about sepsis as a medical condition, it is your body is crashing and you do not have time. Essentially, like everything becomes an emergency because you need to essentially kind of control sepsis very quickly, or it's fatal. So one of the research areas that we are currently studying, I know Dr. Chi has done this a little bit of this research in her lab, is specifically hey, okay, well, here's the medical data of a patient in the hospital, in the ICU. If they were going to go into sepsis, how quickly could we identify those biometrics as they're happening in real time, right? Can we see it before? That's one of those times where it's kind of nice to have false positives, right? Education. This is very, everyone really is interested in this one. How soon can I determine if a student passes or fails a class? And what's scary is I have colleagues who've seen we could detect it within 2 weeks, right? There's a very clear divide. So again, some students show up and then they stop getting on Moodle, right? That's a very clear indication from us as researchers to go, oh, they typically drop out, fail, right? Then how likely is a customer to make a purchase, right? Amazon's really interested in that one. All of your entertainment needs are really interested in that one right there. So again, this becomes the rat race in every single space. And so why I kind of present that is now, right, if that's our goal, well, what do we do? How do we as humans start to kind of evaluate these things? You identify someone has an incurable disease like Alzheimer's. Do you inform them? Do you inform the patient of that? Some of you are nodding. Some of you are kind of still postulating. I know people who say they do not want to know, even though they have it in their family tree, they do not want to know if they have Alzheimer's or are going to get that, right? Because think about just the mental devastation that happens to you personally if suddenly I was to tell you, you are going to forget everything. Like that was soul crushing for people. And so should you, right? Again, that's a higher level ethical discussion. Should you be the bearer of that news, especially when they've made a choice not to know it? Should you inform a student if they're most likely to fail a class, right? Should I, if we did our analytics after 2 weeks, should I tell you, don't bother coming back? You're going to fail. Some of you are, smiling and nodding, but again, that's not necessarily the best approach either, right? There could be, some form of just something's going on in their life that they couldn't in those first 2 weeks really commit to class, or life happens, right? So it becomes a big issue, and also, just because they are your thing is flagging them, that doesn't guarantee a fail, right? Time hasn't happened yet to prove that. So how do you, should you advertise people with potentially sensitive information, right? If you are these companies, you are collecting a lot of their browsing habits, their viewing behaviors, their likes. Those likes may be things that they do not want to share with the world for whatever reason. And so suddenly you're going to advertise? It's terrible. When someone asks you to share your screen, when you're on your Zooms and whatnot, do you have to have a moment to just double check and make sure there's nothing that you don't want shown on the screen? Because I guarantee you, I see how some of y'all share your screens. And you don't want me to see every window that you have open. I wonder why. My point being is, okay, that was with us. Let's add AI into the equation. Now it's AI's turn, right? There were reasons why humans shouldn't do a thing. Now, suddenly, hey, what should AI do if it discovers a condition? Should it immediately start to do those types of things? Again, we live in a country that medical conditions cost money. So if you start immediately working on it, well, that means you're starting to immediately charge someone. Should AI decide if someone's allowed to enroll in a program? So again, are you happy with, you all had to CODA into the computer science department. Are you comfortable with us just giving that to an AI and it decides who gets to come in? Yeah, a lot of, some people, even if you're not, the enthusiastic nods that we saw with people are starting to be like, I don't know, right? Should you generate those ads based on prior shopping behavior? Yes, right? That, again, some of these are, okay, that one doesn't seem egregious at all, right? So the last one I kind of present now is should a person do? And I notice I have it up here where that, again, enthusiastic nod of like, yeah, people should be allowed to do those things. But then when it was an AI making those decisions, there was a lot of hesitation. So suddenly, let's put it into reality. It's not AI that's going to be making those decisions, but it's going to be AI informing a person, right? Hopefully, we'll talk about it, right? Should a person with AI information immediately begin treatment on a discovered condition, right? Should a person with AI decide who gets to enroll in a program? Should a person with AI generate ads for products and whatnot, right? So why I kind of present this is also why I wanted y'all to do sort of the activity beforehand, right? You notice some of those questions were specifically like, well, what do you consider your likeness? We'll get to those types of things and whatnot. But you notice a lot of it started to become a lot of higher level things, like could be trained for moral decisions, right? So now we get to see what you think, right? So hello to everyone and the 3 people online. Hi chat. But okay, what do we consider our likenesses, right? I think this is always an interesting one as we get into the world of deepfakes. But as you can see, it's your personality, it's your appearance, it's your characteristics, it's your hobbies, it's your style. What does style mean, right? I get it. No, I understand. I personally get it. What does that mean? Like, can you quantify style in some way, right? I think it's how a personality is physically expressed, so they don't care what's going on up here. Interesting. But again, so there's the speech, physical attributes. I don't know for sure. Come on. Right? You need to do better. We're in the AI class. You need to be able to quantify that. You learned what object-oriented programming is, right? You know how to establish some parameters to your or states and properties to yourself. They're unique. A lot of this, I already tell you, whatever this is, I'm not going to read all of it. I like it already. Because it's someone who has an opinion on it. Here's why. Okay, AI should be able to model my likeness. And you notice how quickly that's a large chunk of you kind of don't want those types of things to happen. AI should model other people's likeness. And it's still split. I'll kind of point out, yes, it's still split, which is interesting, but less so, right? Same people, you're the same demographic, but someone was okay with it modeling other people, as long as it's not modeling me. Should be able to model someone if it was created by that person. Notice as soon as we add in, if I were to take all of my videos and sit down and learn how to transcribe and put all that into an LLM and build a GWIDA PT or something like that, theoretically, we all are okay with that, right? Because we got to kind of control and build it. Again, it's not, it's very agree, but you notice it's not, it's not universal agreements. AI can be trained to make moral decisions. I like this. You can see that there's people who fully disagree. There's the people who do not want to answer that question, and then there's people who leaned towards it, which is interesting. Again, there's no right answer to this. No one's going to quantify moral, right? It's just a word that you have your own opinion to. AI should be allowed to be trained to make decisions for a student's academic career. Once again, you notice the alarmingness of, no, we don't want the AI to do these things, except for when it starts to inform the shareholders. So we want AI on us. We want it to study us, but We don't want it to make the decision. We don't want it to choose the action. We want it to present us with us humans with options, and you'll see that that's the exact same thing. Inform stakeholders, right? Make decision. No, nobody wants that one. But then inform stakeholders. Yep, fine. And then, yeah, you can see this was the deep understanding is there's a clear difference between that. Again, I fully endorse all of it, right? It's, yes, welcome to the ugly mess that we call ethics and AI suddenly, right? This part was okay. We don't mind that. Now I'm going to ask you why.
Makes mistakes or just lies because it doesn't have like really a baseline common sense. It just
Okay. So to relay it out, AI doesn't say a lot of it again. It doesn't have a baseline common sense. There was something in the beginning there.
It can unpredictably make mistakes.
It can make mistakes and lie. So can humans. And in fact, humans very much, this is not me squashing you. It's humans notoriously make tons of mistakes and they will lie constantly about it. So why I present this, right, is, again, it's not a wrong or right. It's why is it that we are now ascribing that this thing that we're creating must be better than us? And again, that's not a yes or no type of question. That's a much more like you go for a walk on Thanksgiving, if you know what I mean, right? Thank you. Some of you should not know what I mean. My point being is some of these questions are things you stay up till 3 a.m. on, right? Discussing and trying to quantify, right? We can hold a person responsible. We can hold AI responsible, right? And if AI is found to be bad, we delete it. So a lot of these things, yes, I'm suddenly personifying AI as if it was another human, and all of the punishments or things that we can do to it, we can do to AI. We can remove it, right? Just its removal is not the same as a human removal. Yes, again, super high level, but I do want to keep going. Yes, right? You all kind of have these opinions. Yes, I'm not trying to tell you yours is wrong. I'm just cutting holes in them because there are no right answers to this. And this is kind of where, right, this is some of the pull, and this is where the issues start to come in. We, as humans, are starting to show automation bias. The second it's able to do it for us, shocker, we just let it, and then we walk away. And if you think I'm joking, no, we will just let it. You are all just cheating with ChatGPT, and I can't find it is all. That's all. I can't prove it. No, right? People are starting to use it to write emails, and we're not checking if the email was right or not. Literally when we're responding to shootings and tragedies, or when we're telling it to give me recipes, right? I've used ChatGPT specifically on cooking chicken, right? I didn't double check it, right? Why? Because I assumed it was right. It can lie. I have given it this trust. Suddenly that's making chlorine gas. There was the lawyer from last year who just it made up cases. We didn't check it. And I'm saying we, the royal we, not this person did it. I'm saying you all do it because we all do it, right? Who has heard about Barbie in the last few weeks? You haven't heard about Barbie in the last... Oh, my God. All right. Detour. Barbie, wicked controversy. I spell. Look at me. I'm already using AI to just give you the answer because I trust... AI, so in theory, Okay, so here's where I'm just like, as the AI guy. So obviously there are Wicked dolls that were produced kind of to advertise the Wicked movie that have on there specifically a website link. Well, if you go to the link, it's, they say wicked.com. Wicked.com is porn. Who proofread that? Now, specifically, here's where, again, I'm just a random schmuck teaching at a college, right? Here's where my hat went. Is it that a person did it and they don't want to get in trouble with that they made the mistake and so they say AI did it? Or is it AI didn't check? And then people are in trouble because they didn't proofread AI. Someone's getting in trouble either way, but it's how are they getting in trouble, right? And again, can it just start to become a marketing ploy of being like, oh, sorry, our AI screwed up. Hands away because it's not a human, it's not accountable anymore. Sorry, AI did it. It's all. Review your damn prompts is all I'm asking. You cannot trust it, just like you cannot trust me, or just like you can't trust anyone else in the world. Guess what? You're going to have to figure out a way to trust it. So again, if you do, you need to double check it because you are going to blindly trust it. We're having this problem in CS1 right now is how I want you to know. And then there's just blatant lies, right? Again, I was already leaning towards this with the Wicked stuff where it was like, oh, maybe they're saying it's AI that was doing that, but it could have just been a person that now is trying to not get in trouble. Well, Amazon had its whole just walk out technology of like, oh, you didn't even have to like pay. You just picked up the things and the AI did it for you. The AI was people. The AI was just people who were staring at you via web cameras. And that also got them in trouble because that was like sharing biometric stuff. But then we've also got a lot of the FTC and the SEC are starting to crack down or charge people who are making just these egregious, they're just lying. They're like, oh, AI, right? I'm just going to say AI. And so suddenly we trust it suddenly. Yes, I know there's a joke there. I just take the screenshots. Moving on, then we get into this whole idea of predictive targeting, right? Again, if I'm using your shopping behavior as a mechanism for, providing you with coupons or ads or something like that, well, shocker, then you might get coupons. And specifically, this one gets into, it's a story by Target. They were using predictive analytics to send out coupons, right? So these coupons were just like, hey, here's things that you are already working off of. But specifically, right, they were coupons because the shopping behavior of this teenager who turned out to be pregnant was a lot of the materials that are found in pregnancy. And specifically, though, it was that they sent the coupon books to the house, and essentially the father was informed of this for the first time by Target. And yeah, that's a interesting. But here's where again, just like, what? Did that actually happen? That entire story that I have links to articles in with, right? It is an aside, or it's an offhand account from a book on predictive analytics for business. And so there's, again, did it actually happen? Or is it just a story that was a part of a book? Or did it happen, but it didn't reach giant nationwide coverage to the point where we studied it, right? All of those things, if all it needed to be is like an offhand account that an NDA got signed over, and there's no more communication of it. So, did it happen? Again, it didn't. The part I want to get at is it wasn't exactly okay, right? We used sensitive information and then tried to advertise that sensitive information of your essentially a medical condition, if you want to consider it that way. to someone. And then that information was freely given out to the world, aka the father, for, again, things that they may not need to know. Then we also get into this idea of starting to throw in more advertisements. So in this case, LaTanya Sweeney, essentially, if you're trying to do internet searches, you copy and paste and you Google someone's name for whatever reason, right? Some of you do that for me so you can find out if I'm a good professor, right? That's how you find what rate my professor says about me. I used to have a chili pepper. Then they got rid of the chili pepper. And that's why I now look like a mess, right? No, y'all weren't around for the chili pepper days. My point being, getting back to this, again, what Sweeney found was, again, if you're Googling certain types of names, specifically black-sounding names, you were more likely to also see an advertisement for, hey, this person may have a criminal record. So suddenly, right, how I kind of present this is that gets into a weird gray area of like, oh, it's targeting ads, but those ads are specifically to suggest something that may not be, real. But the problem becomes this right here, because again, automation kicked in. Do you click and do you pay for that potential arrest record access? I technically come up on there because I'm in a police report. Don't you dare pull up that information, because here's a fact, it's some personal shit and I will not be happy. Oh yeah. So again, right, it starts to become poor first impressions, right? And I'm not even the one involved in it. I just happen to be a witness. So that's why I'm in mine, right? But that's, again, you see that if you Google Adam Guida and it's just immediately telling you police report stuff, not professor stuff. What kind of impression does that make? Right? That makes a completely different impression than you seeing all of my NC State and scientific stuff, right? So again, these types of things become a major issue because they were computer decisions that are now being presented to humans. And then there's obviously, this is that same kind of, the whole process, and this is, I think, where we started to dig up a lot of those issues, because again, New York, when they were starting to do the grab and go stuff, or they were trying to start to get the grab and go stuff going, again, Amazon started just tracking you with all your biometric information, anything that we use that can be quickly identifiable to us. The problem with that is, certain states, certain places have legislation about that, right? You need to let people know if you're going to be tracking them with biometric information. And then if you don't, right, you get in trouble. You get sued for these types of things. But why I present that is suddenly, okay, well, that was Amazon, and that was in New York City. Well, suddenly, those types of things also start to creep into your backyard. So suddenly, this is Duke. So Duke has a data set, specifically the multi-target, multi-camera data set, in which, should still appear. Yeah, so, just you go outside class today, right? You're going to leave class and you're going to walk outside at some point. What if there was just a nice little camera right there in the oval, just taking action shots, right? You wouldn't think anything of it, right? Oh, okay. Especially if I, make it look official and like there's people around it. We don't touch it, right? You see the surveyors just surveying all the time. Fake it, make it look like you're surveying, and congratulations. Now you have social engineering into how you collect your data sets. More ethical problems, but you could now buy this. You could now purchase this information to, again, look at and track and evaluate students as they're moving through campus in a crowd. Why? Because, again, it's a data set. And it's a complex problem that us as computer scientists are interested in solving. Can I track an individual as they are moving through a crowd, right? That is a mathematically complex question, and yes, we would be interested to use some form of data set to do those types of things. However, as you can imagine, people were not happy about this, right? And so essentially after enough of again, if you go to the link and read through the link, it's not, you're probably not buying the data set from something called exposingai.ai, right? No, this is in a whole article that goes into it. The reason why I'm linking this one instead of the actual database is because after enough of the controversy, Duke removed access to the data set. So you cannot gain access to it anymore. But it was still created, right? And in fact, you'll notice that that is something that is encroaching more and more as we just kind of go into needing all of this data to help train us, our models. So universities, including NC State, have contracted out to these different security companies to track you and data collect on you. Why? For security, right? You take that how you want, but that also means it's, they're not just going to throw the data away, right? It's now data. Let's do something with the data. Can we use it for research? Can we use it for analytics? Can we make kind of predictions for these types of things? And that's extending into other areas as well. And so again, this is veering more into like this, giant surveillance, but data collection is a major part of AI. We need this data so that we can train our models to have better understandings of the world, right? Think about LLMs, think about neural networks, especially these modern ones that we, talked on last week. They're about predictions. They're about trying to think what's the most probable next thing to happen. So we're starting to collect all this information about these things, and so again, we are allowing it to happen. But why I kind of present this and spent so much time on this idea of collection is because then we have to get into, well, what does it mean to give consent, right? Oh, all this data is getting collected. Tee-hee, this thing's listening to me, right? I signed the terms of service. The problem is, right, we fit into a demographic of people who have the ability to give our own consent. But what happens when you start dealing with vulnerable populations? And vulnerable in this case does not mean, it means that getting the consent to study and analyze them has additional steps, right? You cannot just immediately get consent. How does a fetus give consent if you're going to try and study anything to do with childbirth or the creation of life, right? That's something that's happening inside of a womb. And so suddenly there's a pregnant woman that has to also be communicated, and and probably more people. That part I'm not even going to open that can of worms, right? That starts to become a big issue of trying to, right? Who gives consent to the fetus? Well, right? That same thing goes into like prisoners, right? Who gives consent for prisoners? Yeah, sure, the prisoners can give consent, but oftentimes it becomes a why, or how are they giving that consent, right? A prisoner typically is giving consent typically through some kind of research study to, show some, what's the word I'm looking for? Not extracurricular, rehabilitation, right? There's some form of a rehabilitating process, and typically with those, like, you're going to be in the kitchen or you're going to be doing one of these jobs, typically those mean that you have to be on good behavior, and so everything suddenly becomes like, well, if I don't say yes, is there the potential that I'm going to be punished in some way? Interestingly enough, this is why we ask for your consent. This is why I asked for the consent, just to study whether or not you look at dark mode or life mode. Because in theory, you could have said no, or you may have said yes out of fear I would punish you if you didn't say yes, right? Those types of things become a big issue as we're trying to start to study these things. Again, you can see that this is not all-inclusive. There are tons more, but we start having to deal with this issue of specifically who's allowed to have consent, or who is allowed to give consent for these different things. Why does this start to matter? Who here is familiar with Quaker Oats? Who here is familiar with Quaker Oats in regards to ethics? Let's just find is there a Wikipedia on there? Just find the Wikipedia, that's fine. No, fine. Plutonium file. Oh, hey, there you are. So yeah, the plutonium files goes into this Oats, or Quaker. Quaker would be Quaker Oats, specifically. This is why we have something known as the informed, or the IRB, right? The whole internal review board. In Massachusetts, 73 children were fed oatmeal that was radioactive because MIT and Quaker Oats wanted to understand how nutrients were absorbed into the body and radioactivity glows. That's it. Specifically, these are orphans, and so they didn't need to get consent. We didn't need to get consent for them. It was a gift. Yes. Yes, that was how children were labeled. So specifically, that's why I start to get into this, because again, let's start looking at work I've done, right? I've done face recognition. And so suddenly you have to start answering these questions because again, bias in AI. And I told you at the beginning of this lecture, yes, AI does have bias. It's built in. It's literally part of how the sausage is made. So when you start to think about face recognition, you have to really or artificial face aging, right? You have to start asking yourself, well, how were those varying age groups collected? Because you might notice that certain people, as you get older, start to have diminished mental capacities. And so suddenly, how do you get consent for those people? Right? How were those ethnicities assigned? Remember, that was a discussion that we had where one of my participants said they were American, so I had to throw out their data, right? Do I change it? Or, right? Again, those start to become those ethical questions. Specifically, the data set that we were working off of was known as the MORPH data set. And so the MORPH data set has 400,000 images of 70,000 subjects, longitudinal, as it says. But I, will have you just kind of give a look, and then I'll ask the question. What kind of pictures do those look like? That's because they are mugshots. And mugshots are publicly available, not publicly available, those are published. So, you can use the Freedom of Information Act to just get mugshots. And so you take enough of those. So again, these are prisoners, or at least people who have been convicted in some way, or at least taken to jail. And so again, you're now essentially using the police database to you build out your data set. That starts to be, again, there is no good or bad. There's just this weird, uncomfortable, gray area. But why we start to get into that is because, right, if you have not sat down to watch this hearing, specifically on the Facebook whistleblower, I strongly encourage it. It is long, it is monotonous at times, but it really starts to talk about the fact that those recommendation engines that I had you build, right? You all built recommendation engines. What was the most common one? I'll give you a hint. Had to do with genre. What would you recommend?
The same genre.
If you liked this genre, let's just keep on recommending this genre. And so that's, again, we have the government who is complaining about how AI is making these decisions, but these decisions, that is literally, yes, we're designing out those algorithms to give you what you wanted, right? You liked this kind of video, so we're gonna propose and recommend videos that are like that. You liked or have a certain friend group who likes a certain group of things. We're going to continue to recommend potentially things that are similar to that group. I also kind of get into this about, it's called echo chambers in essence, right? But it has, more impacts than just social media, right? So in this situation, okay, let's use AI and statistics and whatnot to maybe do some resource planning, right? Where do we send our police officers at the end, every day? Oh, well, we know that this area is going to have higher crime, so let's send more police officers there. Well, the problem is that, yes, then when it comes to your arrests and looking at that for, the next iteration of stationing your police officers, of course this place is going to have more crime. You put more people to arrest people there. And so, again, it becomes this giant feedback loop. We continue to confirm the same things, and we amplify them in some way. This is, so an analogy I've used in the past is, again, let's think about it. Let's see. None of you, I can almost guarantee, I would be willing to put money down that if I were to pull up your YouTube recommendations or your TikTok recommendations or whatever recommendations you get recommended all on a daily basis, none of you would have underwater basket weaving. Why? Because underwater basket weaving is a joke. It is meant to be a joke. It is meant to be an insult to college of like the just random classes that you can take at college, but also it's because none of us have interest in being underwater while trying to weave baskets. Anyone who does that is literally just in on the joke. And that's, again, it's like pickleball in that sense of no one really knows the rules, but it just exists. My point being, right, again, YouTube, Netflix, TikTok, they're never going to recommend that to you, not because you hate it. They don't know if you're going to hate it, right? They know what you like. They know what you dislike. Underwater basket weaving? That's kind of that weird gray area where I'm just not going to even touch. Why? Because I have plenty of things that I can recommend that you do like. If you liked Minecraft 5 years ago, oh boy, I got enough content for the rest of your life types of things. So again, it becomes this big echo chamber. But just because I see I have 10 minutes left, right? Then we start getting into some of the other ways that AI is starting to get used out there. So True.leo or Trulio is starting to use AI for police body camera footage. That's happening in Henderson County right now. That's how I found out about it. But specifically, right, think about the concept of why we're really interested in AI, automation. Well, we're collecting a lot of data, and that data is a lot of data. And the problem is that we as humans don't want to look at data, especially because it may be time intensive. If I'm collecting hours of body camera footage, who's going to sit down to watch the hours of body camera footage? If I'm uploading hours of content on YouTube, who's watching? Right? And so in this case, at least, this is, I can't speak for what the company is doing, but what I'll kind of turn and do a nice little tongue-in-cheek joke is, hold on, I wonder when they're going to do it to me. There's my camera. Who's actually watching this? Can't wait. My point being is now we get to get into the fun stuff. So again, how I'm going to frame this is, yes, AI is used for weapons. I've had military students in this class. I'm from a military town. My grandfather was military. We're using this stuff. I think it's more like I'm blown away by this and terrified at the same time, right? So South Korea and North Korea at their DMZ specifically has automated gun turrets that if they identify a human target in pitch dark, there you go. They can neutralize that. The DOD, the Department of Defense, has self-steering bullets, as in this video right here Not going to spend too much time on it. Just want to, just focus on that for a second. That green line is controlling where to go. You notice, well, why not? Just first untimed user trying to do a sniper rifle. It's auto-correcting right there. So, that's happening out there in the world. And specifically, they can hit targets, up to 10 kilometers away, 6 miles away. So yes, these types of things are out there in the world. I'm trying to frame it in the sense of we are now in sort of this new AI race, like a tech race of like, we're trying to find where it can be used for efficiency's sake, right? But then we also get into the attitudes of AI, and specifically the idea that two different areas could have, or two different perspectives. Some of you're in an AI class because you're a computer scientist and you realize that it's gonna be good for your resume. But I know I've had people who are not computer scientists want to be in this class. That it doesn't necessarily mean that they dislike AI, but people, again, you're gonna be going home for the holidays and you get to talk about why the computer decided to turn off your internet. But then we also get into other types of more higher level problems, not higher level, but different kinds of problems. So specifically what happens when we're dealing with translation from one language into the other, right? Specifically, this one has been addressed. It was pretty quick to be addressed, but specifically if I'm dealing with languages that do not have gendered terms. So Turkish, for example, does not have a gendered term for, what we in English would be referring to he's, she's, and whatnot. And so when you're trying to do a conversion from one language into the other, well, one of the big major issues was AI was being stereotypical because probabilistically, again, we've talked about natural language processing and how you train it to identify if something is spam or not spam. It's how frequent is a term attributed to a specific category, right? That became a major issue of now, only males were being assigned certain types of occupations. Females were only being assigned certain occupations. Again, at some point, Google had to, say, hey, there are alternatives. Then we also get into the energy usage of AI and how that's starting to increase over time. But it's just getting worse. So when we start thinking about AI, how does AI learning differentiate from human learning, right? I kind of posed this question in the last 5 minutes because we get into deepfakes, and everyone really does not like deepfakes, right? And here's where we get into really like, what the hell categories. Like this is this week, November 21st, 2024. Under the current child pornography statute, the court has interpreted the definition of a child to mean an actual child. So artificial deep fake generations of students under, in this case, high school students, doesn't constitute child pornography. Or that's, again, we're in weird, ugly territory right now where we are scrambling to make better regulations that do account for AI. Congratulations, you are the world experts in this thing that is upending everything, even in the concept of like, what does it mean to be considered child pornography? But then we also just get into deepfakes and specifically again, right? If they're not okay, why are we still using them? Why are we still applying them? Is it okay when OJ, before he passed, or his estate licensed his image for Kendrick Lamar's music video? Is that okay, right? You deep fake these things. Is it okay when a deep fake of someone from the Reserve Bank of India is starting to spread false news because it's a deep fake? So is it okay because they're a public figure? At which point, what the hell do you mean? Because I'm a public figure. I'm a state employee, right? You better not deep fake me. Catch these hands. And this is Adam talking. This ain't Dr. G. I don't want no deep fakes of me, and I'll show you how I'm going to react. That's not stopping Disney, though. Disney does not care. Now, granted, this is a great resource. I'm seeing where my time is. Right, Disney's subscribe to this, watch this. This is fascinating to see what they're pushing out there. But yeah, right, they're just studying deepfakes because they can use it for movies, right? Because it's very much used in movies all the time. So yeah, that's starting to come out. But this is, again, this is kind of how I'll end sort of the lecture today, is like, we got to go back again. I really skipped over Gen AI, of like whether or not, it's okay or not. But I'm going to leave you with the Salvador Dali quote: "Good artists copy, great artists steal." And why I present that is, at the end of the day, I'm just copying and stealing from Jim Carrey, his Ace Ventura era, not his current like existential nihilistic era. When he's doing this stuff, right? And if you notice, I'm very animated, right? Also, I copy steal from Robin Williams. I open every class. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, or good morning, Vietnam, going on there. So notice I've just kind of taken these qualities that I liked and I emulate. And so again, I copy steal from Jim Carrey. I copy steal from Robin Williams. My last little copy steal, I would say, is from a New York Times best-selling author and King of the Deathmatch, Mick Foley. That one's, I'm not even getting, no questions on that one. That is just for me. Yes, my family and friends are there too, but like, whatever you're watching right now, right, there's creative thought that I put into this, but it's also being trained off of what I got taught over my years that I did like. Again, I did improv. So a lot of my tricks up my sleeve are being stolen from improv. So those types of things start to happen. And this is the last little thing I'll finish off because I got 30 seconds. This is a wonderful video series by Kirby Ferguson. Everything is a remix. And it really just kind of digs into the fact that, hey, almost all the songs that you listen to have some form of a remix component where they blatantly stole sound. But we're all okay with it when it's done in music. So why are we so complaining about AI art? Is it that it's not training enough? I only have a little bit of time. Where are you? No. Is it that this isn't training enough? It isn't stealing and copying from enough people? But I'm already out of time, so get out of here. Enjoy Thanksgiving. We come back, we will be worrying about your final exam and the review, but now I'm just rambling. So once again, happy Turkey Day.